Welcome to the Listeners Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of mental health. Here, we bring you insights, stories, and expert advice to help you understand, navigate, and thrive in your mental wellness journey. Let's start building a more mindful world together.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're talking about something that's really important, especially if you're working in like those busy tech hubs like Bangalore or Pune or Mumbai. Mental health at work. And specifically, should you talk to your boss about it?
It's a tricky one for sure.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, even our sources are saying it's kind of a daunting endeavor. I mean, think about it. The Indian work context is already so, there's such a stigma around mental health. It can feel like a lot to deal with.
Totally. Okay, so let's unpack this whole daunting endeavor thing. Our source material actually lays out 9 different factors that can influence whether someone decides to be open about their mental health at work. One that really stood out to me is the difference between men and women. Women seem less likely to disclose. Why do you think that is?
Well, this isn't just in India. We see this in studies all over the world, and it really points to the kind of societal pressures that women face. They might worry about appearing less capable or reliable if they talk about their mental health. And this kind of connects to another factor, which is how much emotional support you feel like you have at work.
Oh, for sure.
If you feel like your supervisor and colleagues genuinely care and will support you, it's way easier to share something so personal.
Makes sense. The source also mentions that the type of mental health condition someone has can affect their decision to disclose. Like someone with a mood disorder may be less likely to share compared to, let's say, someone with schizophrenia. Is that about the stigma attached to different conditions?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, some conditions are perceived as more disruptive to work.
Right.
And that leads to fear of judgment or even losing your job. And of course, the severity of your symptoms plays a role too. If they're really impacting your work, you may feel like you have no choice but to talk about it.
Right. Yeah.
Our sources also say that your specific work setting matters too.
Yeah.
Some industries may be more open or have better resources for mental health. We are seeing some positive changes, though, particularly in tech. Companies in Bangalore, for example, are starting to really prioritize employee well-being.
Yeah.
But there's still a long way to go in many industries across India.
Okay, so it's this constant balancing act.
Yeah.
Weighing the risks of telling people against the potential benefits.
Yeah.
The source mentions this study in the Netherlands, where more than 60% of people who disclosed their mental health had a good experience. Is that even remotely applicable to workplaces in India?
Well, we have to be careful about taking findings from one culture and applying them somewhere else. Right.
The truth is, attitudes towards mental health in the workplace can be totally different in the Netherlands compared to India.
Yeah, of course.
However, that study does highlight one really important thing. Context matters. If a company actively builds a supportive and empathetic culture, the chances of a positive outcome are much higher.
I see. So let's say you are thinking about disclosing. Our source lists some reasons why someone might choose to do so, like getting accommodations at work, reducing their stress levels, or even using those company-provided mental health programs. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, those are all valid reasons.
Yeah.
Disclosing can be a way to stand up for your needs and create a better environment for yourself at work. Imagine getting the flexibility to go to therapy sessions or having a quiet space to deal with anxiety.
Right.
Those accommodations can make a big difference.
Yeah, it's like taking charge of your own well-being.
Saying, hey, this is what I need to be at my best. And by being open, maybe you can even make it easier for other people to do the same.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, shifting the whole work culture towards more understanding and support.
Exactly. It could be like a catalyst for change, but let's be real, disclosing isn't always easy.
Yeah.
So our sources offer some really practical advice on how to get ready for that conversation with your boss, especially in the Indian context.
I like how they break it down into do's and don'ts. Like paying attention to how your boss acts. Do they gossip? Do they make jokes about mental health?
Right.
Those are some red flags.
You really got to read the room, understand the culture that already exists there.
Right.
The sources also suggest talking to a therapist or your HR department before you have the conversation.
Oh, okay.
A therapist can help you figure out your feelings and come up with a plan, and HR can give you insight into company policies and resources.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through this alone.
And in India, maybe talking to colleagues you trust who've gone through something similar could help.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Getting their perspective on how the company handles these situations would be so valuable, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. That insider knowledge can be really empowering, especially given how things work in Indian workplaces.
Right. So we've talked about the do's. Now, what about the don'ts? The sources say, don't just casually bring this up with your boss. It's better to schedule a meeting so they can really focus on what you need to say.
Right. It shows them you respect their time.
Exactly.
And it makes sure they're actually able to listen to you.
Yeah. And don't go in unprepared. The sources really emphasize that. Think through what you need, what accommodations would make a real difference, and how you'll ask for them. Practicing the conversation beforehand can make you feel more confident and help you stay on track.
It's like any big presentation, you've got to prepare.
Right. Be ready to answer questions about how your mental health might affect your work, but frame it in a positive way. Focus on solutions and show your commitment to your job.
Exactly.
It might seem scary, but having a plan can really calm those nerves. And remember, this isn't just about you.
Right.
You're maybe starting a conversation that could help other people too.
Absolutely. And it's important to know that you have rights. India has laws against workplace discrimination based on mental health. Enforcement might not always be perfect, but things are changing.
It's good to see that shift happening.
It is.
But what if, even with all the preparation, the meeting doesn't go well? What should someone do if their boss reacts negatively?
First, don't freak out.
Okay.
HR is there to help you. They can help you navigate the situation, mediate if needed, and make sure your rights are protected. And they can connect you with resources like employee assistance programs, which can be a real lifeline.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Those safety nets are really important.
They are. It's all about having a support system both inside the company and outside. Hopefully, as more people become aware and share their experiences, workplaces will naturally become more understanding and supportive.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
A workplace where mental health is treated just like physical health.
Right.
A place where people can be themselves without being judged. And that brings us to the core issue, the decision to disclose or not.
Right.
Our sources make it really clear that there's no single answer for everyone.
For sure.
It's very personal, and there's so many factors to consider.
It is. It really is a personal choice. And, our sources even suggest that sometimes not disclosing can be the best way to go. Maybe you have a strong support network outside of work, your symptoms are managed well, and you just feel good handling things yourself. It's all about finding what's right for you and your specific situation.
That makes total sense. It's not about forcing disclosure. It's about being able to make an informed choice. But no matter what you choose, those steps you mentioned to prepare, those seem really useful. Even if you don't end up disclosing, just knowing what you need, understanding your company's policies, and being aware of what resources are available, that's got to be beneficial.
I completely agree. Think of it as building your toolkit just in case. Even if you never need to use those tools, just knowing they're there can provide peace of mind.
Like having a safety net.
Yeah.
And speaking of safety nets, you mentioned employee assistance programs. Could you explain what those are for our listener? I'm not sure everyone is familiar with them.
Yeah, definitely. Employee assistance programs, or EAPs, are programs that companies offer. They provide confidential counseling and support services to employees.
Okay.
These services can be for all sorts of challenges, like personal issues, work-related problems, pretty much anything. This could include things like mental health issues, stress, relationship troubles, financial worries, anything like that.
Gotcha.
EAPs can be a really valuable resource for employees who are struggling and maybe don't know where to turn for help.
That sounds so helpful, especially in a high-pressure environment like the Indian tech scene. Our sources really stress how crucial these programs are, especially for companies in Mumbai and Pune, where the competition and the workload could be pretty intense.
Absolutely, and I think it's important to remember that EAPs aren't just for emergencies. They can also be used for preventative care, like learning techniques to manage stress or getting advice on work-life balance. So even if you're not facing a big challenge right now, just knowing your company offers an EAP can give you a sense of security.
It's like being proactive about your well-being, not waiting until things get really bad. Okay, so to recap this part of our deep dive, let's go over the key takeaways for our listeners again. We've talked about a lot.
Yeah, we have. The most important takeaway is this. The decision to tell your employer about your mental health is a very personal one.
Right.
There's no right or wrong answer. And it really depends on a lot of things, many of which are unique to India.
Right. Things like your gender, the level of support you feel at work, what your specific condition is, even the overall culture of your company. These all play a role.
Exactly. And remember, disclosing can have both upsides and downsides. It might give you access to accommodations, reduce your stress, and help you get support from programs like EAPs. But there's always that risk of facing stigma, being misunderstood, and facing negative consequences. And that's a valid concern, especially in India.
Absolutely. And if you do decide to tell your employer, preparation is key. Know what you need, pay attention to how your boss acts, talk to a therapist or HR, and practice the conversation beforehand.
Right.
Those steps can really change how things go.
Definitely. And even if the meeting doesn't go the way you hoped, you still have options. HR can be a big help.
Mm-hmm.
And like we said, India has laws to protect you from discrimination because of mental health. You're not alone in this.
That's so important to remember. You have rights and you have resources. And hopefully, as more people feel comfortable sharing their stories, workplaces will start to become more understanding and supportive on their own.
I really hope so.
And that leads us perfectly to the last part of our deep dive, where we'll talk about this bigger picture. How do we create workplaces where mental health isn't a taboo subject, but an open part of the conversation, especially in those busy tech hubs in India?
Yeah, it feels like a big change is needed, moving from those struggles people have on their own to a more like collective responsibility for creating healthier workplaces.
Right.
So how do we get to that point where mental health isn't taboo, but it's like, openly talked about and supported, especially in India's tech world?
That is the big question.
It is.
Our sources really stress that companies need to be proactive, not just reacting when something comes up. They even quote a supervisor who says that what a company does after someone discloses their mental health is even more important than that first conversation.
Oh, wow.
It's about actions actually matching their words. Oh, I see. I'm thinking about those Indian companies we mentioned, the ones that are really leading the way in tech, especially in those big hubs. They're going beyond just EAPs. They're making mental health awareness part of their whole culture. Workshops, open discussions. They even have mindfulness practices. It's pretty amazing.
It is. It's about normalizing these conversations, making it okay for people to say, hey, I'm not doing great, without worrying about judgment. And it all starts at the top.
Yeah.
When leaders are open and share their own experiences, it sets the tone for the whole organization.
It's like flipping the script. Instead of employees feeling like they have to hide their struggles, companies are creating a space where they can ask for help.
Yeah.
And wouldn't that benefit everyone in the end? Happier, healthier employees are probably more productive and engaged.
Exactly. And that brings us back to that question our source asks. How can we as individuals and as a society create better workplaces for everyone, no matter their mental health? It's a big challenge.
Huge.
But it's one worth taking on.
Absolutely. So what are some things companies can actually do to make this kind of supportive environment? What can our listeners look for or even advocate for in their own companies?
Well, first off, clear mental health policies are crucial.
Okay.
These policies should lay out things like how they handle discrimination, what the process is for asking for accommodations, and how to access things like EAPs.
Got it.
It's like a roadmap for both employees and managers on dealing with mental health at work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Having those guidelines can really make a difference. But policies aren't everything, are they?
Nope, not at all.
What about that cultural shift we were talking about? How do you create that?
That's key. Companies should invest in training programs for both managers and employees.
Right.
These programs should focus on raising awareness, getting rid of stigma, and teaching people how to have these open conversations about mental health. Imagine a workplace where managers can spot the signs of someone struggling and know how to offer support.
That would be amazing.
It would. It would make people feel seen and heard instead of like they have to suffer in silence.
Exactly. And beyond training, companies can also encourage openness by having support groups focused on mental health, organizing events to raise awareness, and creating spaces for people to support each other. Any final thoughts for our listeners as they think about all this in their own work lives?
Just remember that you're not alone in this. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this. Every step you take towards a more open and supportive workplace matters. Whether it's choosing to disclose, advocating for better policies, or just lending an ear to a coworker, every action makes a difference. Let's work together to build a world where everyone can be themselves at work and thrive.
Thank you for joining us today on the Listeners Podcast. If you need support, you can call us on 011-4084-8400 or write to us on our email, help@listeners.com. Stay connected with us as we continue to explore and empower each other. Until next time, take care and be kind to yourself.